President Trump had a rally in North Carolina the other night, and he hasn't been doing too many of them. I think the reason for that is COVID, because when he did his Tulsa rally, remember that, in Oklahoma? Herman Cain was there, and then Herman Cain got COVID and died. So I don't think they'd outwardly say this, but I'm pretty sure behind closed doors, even Trump and the people around him are like, that wasn't such a good idea now, was it? So I think in many ways the Democrats might be lucky, and Biden might be lucky that Trump hasn't been able to go out there on the campaign trail and hit his stride, and the rallies have been few and far between, because that is the environment that Trump thrives in. Now, having said that, it is also true that he's the president, and so the rallies are going to take a back seat to however he's doing in terms of the policies and his job, and he's been an abysmal failure on COVID. He's been an abysmal failure on the economy, and that'll probably override the rallies, even if he was hitting his stride in the rallies. But it was interesting to see him back out there doing a rally. I want to play some parts for you. Here's the first one. He's going to riff on the difference between Hillary and Biden. Now, this is interesting because you could always tell when Trump meanders off script and when he stays on script. This is him definitely going off script, and he makes an interesting point.
Biden's a globalist sellout who spent his career laying waste to American communities. And he talks about he's going to do this, he doesn't have any idea, he has no clue. He's going to do this. He's been there for 47 years. And he just really left. He left 3.5, 4 years ago, right? So he just left, but he's been there for 47 years. I'm going to do this. After 47 years, he's had a change of heart. This is the craziest election. Look, somebody said, what's the difference between crooked Hillary Clinton and Slow Joe? So the difference is the following. She's meaner, probably not as nice. I don't know. You can't get any worse than her, when you think. But the big difference is she's smarter than he is, okay? He's a nicer person, but he's not smart. He never was, not in prime time, and certainly not now.
I don't know if I agree with that. He's trying to say, well, Hillary was smarter and Joe's not that smart. It looks to me like Hillary is just more conniving and Machiavellian and willing to do those smoke-filled backroom political deals. Now, I bet Joe is too, but he just doesn't come across as conniving. And, when you look at a younger Joe Biden, I don't know, he actually seems like he might be pretty smart, although I colossally disagree with him on a million things. He's a tried and true corporatist. He's been on the wrong side of major decisions throughout his career. Early on in his career, he allied with segregationists. I'm not excusing any of that. I'm just saying, does he appear to be with it cognitively, and did he appear to be somewhat intelligent when he was younger? Yeah, I think so. I actually don't know who's smarter, Hillary or Joe Biden, but I wouldn't be surprised if it cut either way. I just think that Trump looks at the characteristics that somebody like Hillary has, which is conniving and cold-blooded, and he views that as intelligence. He thinks that's intelligence, which gets back to something I had said previously about Trump, which is deep down, during the 2016 election, before, everybody voted and we learned that Trump won, I think Trump had this thing in him where he actually wanted to be like Hillary Clinton. Now, here's why I say that, because Hillary Clinton is beloved by the establishment. The establishment loves her. She's ideal to the establishment. And I think that Trump always wanted that sort of pat on the head from the elites, where the elites would tell him, we think you're the elite of the elite and you're our leader. He always wanted that. He always wanted the official cool kid circle, all the people who went to Harvard and Yale and are on Wall Street and stuff like that. He wants their approval more than anybody because he's a deep believer in hierarchy. And so he sees the people at the top of the hierarchy, the establishment, and he's actually jealous. And the fact that he wasn't part of that club, that led to him actually stumbling upon a great campaign strategy where he pretended to be more anti-establishment. I mean, I've told the story on air before. There's this big expose article that came out a little bit after Trump won, where they described a meeting that happened in Trump Tower when Trump was considering running. He called into his office for a meeting the top bundler to Mitt Romney. So in other words, the guy who knows all the lobbyists and has all the connections and can raise the most money from billionaires and wealthy people and corporations. And Trump had a meeting with that guy. And Trump was like, I'm thinking about running. Will you be on my team? And the guy was just trying to brush Trump off because he didn't take him seriously. So what he said to him is, just trying to get out of the meeting, he was like, I think it's a new day and age in politics, and maybe you would do better if you ran and said, I'm rejecting big money and I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm financing my own campaign. And so I'm a true outsider and I'm not like these old school politicians. And so Trump heard that and he was like, I think that's a brilliant idea. And he used those talking points when he ran and he won. But that whole strategy was birthed because Mitt Romney's top bundler didn't want to give Trump the time of day because he thought he was a joke. So he floated the idea and then Trump ran with it. So ultimately, Trump wants to be beloved by the establishment. And, he's got his administration now packed full of establishment people, and he's a deeply establishment president in terms of the policies he's pursuing. So, yeah, when he looks at Hillary and all those negative characteristics about Hillary, how she's conniving and she'll backstab you and she'll cut the backroom deals and she's Machiavellian and she's playing the game, he sees that as intelligence. He sees that as like, oh, she's really smart. I just look at that, I see it for what it is. I don't think that if you're conniving, you're intelligent. If you're conniving, I think you're conniving. That's what I think. I know it's a tautological, but that's what I feel about the situation. If you have those characteristics, you embody those characteristics. I don't think that makes you intelligent. So I don't know. I don't know who's smarter, Joe or Hillary, but I wouldn't be surprised if it cuts either way. The thing about Joe, guys, is, yes, he comes across as the everyman. And now Trump is trying to use that against him. But Don, I don't think that's going to work. And honestly, I think it's not going to work because it's similar characteristics to what Trump showed in 2016. How Trump was so slippery because when Hillary attacked him, in many ways she attacked him. And like when remember in the debates where she was like, I think Donald just attacked me for studying for this debate. Guilty. I studied for this debate and he's unprepared. So I don't think it's a bad thing. It just came across to a lot of people as like, this is the smart kid in class who's like dunking on the person who's not as smart. And so a lot of people looked at that dynamic and sided more with Trump because it's like, hey, screw you, trying to act like, oh, I'm so much smarter than you. And, I did my homework. I prepared or whatever. The everyman, the every person is going to be like, you know what? You're kind of obnoxious and annoying. So, but Joe doesn't have that in him. Joe comes across like the everyman, like Uncle Joe. And so I think a lot of these attacks from Trump on Joe, like attacking him for his intelligence, I don't think that's going to land in the same way that the attacks on Hillary landed. Because people are just going to be like, you know what? That's actually just kind of mean. Like, you think you're making a brilliant point. You're just a dick. So I think that in many ways, Biden is slippery in the same way that Trump 2016 was slippery. Because there is something about people who have that X factor where stuff doesn't land on them as much. And for all of his problems, Joe does come across like everyman, and people don't have that visceral hatred of Joe like they had of Hillary. And so these kinds of attacks, like, oh, he's just not smart, I don't think that's going to work, man. I don't think that's going to work. So, and the other thing I wanted to comment on was, you heard Trump there at the beginning. He made the argument like, oh, Joe's saying he wants to do all these things. He's been there for 47 years. So why didn't he already do it? Like, this is ridiculous. So that line of attack is a line of attack that's effectively trying to say, hey, he is the status quo. He was just in office and things weren't good, so you got to go with me. Now, here's the problem. I think that this line of attack would have worked just fine in 2016. But see, now Donald Trump has been president for 4 years. So whatever you throw at Biden in that vein, he could just flip it right back on you. And he could say, you've been in there the last 4 years, and the economy is crumbling. We have now 190,000 Americans who died of COVID. Millions of Americans have had it. Tens of millions of people lost the health care that myself and Barack Obama gave them. So you're the establishment as well, and you're responsible for this mess. So that outsider edge in 2016, he no longer has that because it could just be flipped right back on him. And Joe could have said, yeah, but I was a senator. You're the president. I was never the president. I was the vice president and I was a senator. You're the president. You own the last 4 years. This is one of the problems with the Republican strategy is that, and I saw this a lot during the RNC, they would argue like, President Trump had built the best economy the world has ever seen, and we're going to build it again. But wait, you skipped a chapter. What happened in the middle? He built the best economy we've ever seen, and he's going to do it again. So you're admitting right now it's terrible. You can't just like press fast forward. Like, we're going to skip a chapter or two, and then we're in that chapter right now, and it's a mess, and you're going to get blamed for it. So, listen, in some ways, I think Trump, he's in his element when he's doing these rallies. But yet again, I don't think he's doing as well as he was doing in 2016 in these rallies, and he doesn't have as consistent and coherent a message as he did back then. He's all over the place with his attacks on Biden, and the most prominent lines of attacks have been, you guys all know it, Joe Biden is an Antifa lover, and he's effectively a communist or a Marxist, and he's radical left. And since that's the main argument coming from Trump, I don't think that's going to land at all. Which is why I was sounding the alarms in 2016 about how he could beat Hillary, and this time I do feel like Biden still has the edge because Trump's theory here is not bearing out, and he also is responsible for everything going on right now, and it's not good. But, hey, with these rallies back, this certainly gives me a lot of material.